This is Orin McIntosh. Oh, we've got to zoom out a little bit. Orin worked here for many years. How many years did you work here, Orin?
33.
33. Oh my goodness, that's a lifetime.
33.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good morning.
Good morning. And yeah, just show us around a little bit.
This would be the main. If you were a visitor, you would ring the doorbell, and somebody would go out and assure that you were a good person, you know, and you weren't going to blow the place up or something. And then you come in, and you would come in to the visitor gallery here. Most times the visitors stayed behind this protection here. Right where I'm standing now would be where the guest book was, and we would get you to sign the guest book. And then if the transmitter and everything was running properly, and we had a little bit of spare time, we would probably give you a tour of as much as we could of the building, you know, let you get a good look at the map and whatnot.
What are these items over here, Orin?
Well, these are what's left of some of the tuning circuit. Now this might have been in the tuning house, and it might have been in the final here. I'm not too sure, Dwight, where that would be, if you can remember.
I think this was the final, the RCA.
Yeah, that's
The
fine.
one in the garage is the one from the
Yeah.
tuning.
And there, here in the corner, you can see this is one of the oil-filled capacitors. It would be in the 50 kilowatt circuitry. And here, this is a part of this piece right here that you're looking at here. That would have been bolted to the cement at tower base. And this portion here, you'd have to turn this insulator upside down. This would be the insulator that held the tower, and it would be upside down, and it would fit in a concave there. This portion, of course, was bolted to the bottom of the tower.
There's a little dimple there.
Yeah,
That fits into a dimple on that other piece.
yeah, which is that capacitor sitting there. It's
Why don't I move that capacitor?
as we were talking about this, Gary, the other day, the whole tower, of weight of the tower, was on this piece of porcelain. This piece of porcelain, as you can see, is quite heavy. I'm not sure, but it's at least an inch, maybe 2 inches thick. And it would be, but this is what they were always afraid of in 1939 and 40 on, was somebody coming along and firing a 3006 or something at this and striking this and fracturing it and taking down the tower. And that's what happened during the storm. With vibration and everything, it fractured.
Yep.
So this was the only insulator, the spare insulator that we had. And of course, we were lucky that we had it, although there was no way that we were ever going to see it actually in service. So this was a spare. This was created for this particular tower, that insulator. And that was a storm of 50. What was that?
76?
76.
76, June 4th. So anyway, then,
What about this map on the floor here, Orin?
well, the map, I think the map on the floor in its day represented the main radio stations that were operating at that particular time in 1939.
Yeah.
And of course, this here is all, as you can see, there's a piece missing. This was all what they called battleship linoleum. In those days, it was a 1/4 inch thick, and that was a very difficult for these letters to be all cut and put into the floor the way they did. Mind the story, I heard that it was a Chinese fellow that did this. But if you look right here, there you can see the thickness of the, and it was all one solid color, you can see. And I think the reason they called it battleship linoleum is because it probably was meant for that type of service. Dwight has a piece of that insulator there. You can get an idea of the
There's a bigger
thickness.
piece in the garage, but
You
it's
can
too
get it.
heavy to carry.
So you see, that's at least 1.25 inches, maybe even more.
There's a thumb.
Yeah.
So there was a whole barrel full of pieces after that came down.
That's amazing that that could support 60 tons, eh?
Well, you know, we used to calculate it. And the guys that come out and would check the tower and that, they would say that it was more than 60
Yeah.
tons.
I know I read 70 at one point there.
66 tons.
So tell me,
Now, the
Fred.
original RCA, all this blue wall here, from that portion down, all that blue wall, all the way down to that corner, was all red panels, and it was all equipment, and it would all represent, that was the area that the RCA transmitter occupied.
right,
And right here in the middle, right here, would be, that was the center door. And when you walked in there, you had the carrier tube on one side, and you had the peak tube on the other side, the water-cooled 898s, and that's where you walked in. All these doors during the day had interlocked. If you had a guest come in, and we used to have lots of children coming in, school children, give them tours, and if one of them would accidentally go up there and try to get in or turn a handle or something, the transmitter, of course, would shut down. So we were very careful, watched, and they were good. The kids were always good.
so this, this big pad here is where it's at?
Yeah, this is really, you can almost see where this was a walkway. This was a door that went in. It seems to me that the old RCA transmitter itself would be right about that big. Then the 5 kilowatt sat down there.
And why was there a 5 kilowatt?
Well,
or
the
50?
5 kilowatt was the first part of the transmitter.
Oh, right.
We needed the 5 kilowatt, we needed that transmitter, and then this here was a big 50 kilowatt amplifier. So you use the 5 kilowatts, you used its signal, its modulation, and then you amplified it to get the 50 kilowatts.
Yep.
And that always, up here, that always was where the RF from the transmitter went to the tower. And that was a special insulator.
It's quite a large cable.
This was a special insulator here. And now it's all coax. But in those days it was an open line.
Okay.
We call open line. And that was just 1/2-inch copper tubing going along there and going to the output.
Now, you made this switch.
Yeah,
here.
this was a transfer switch, so we could transfer the load here into the dummy antenna, which sat under this ductwork for testing purposes.
Right.
We used to do that for testing. No, I'm not too sure. They have a dummy antenna now in the new building. This is all to air conditioning. I remember I was telling you about the filters.
Yeah,
If we find a filter downstairs, I'll explain that better to you if we find one downstairs.
well, these are,
This is the filter pad, and this is where those filters were. They're very dangerous because the fact that they were alive. You shorted them out before you did anything to them, you know. And every once in a while they had protection on them, and if they blew a fuse, it would be like somebody shooting a shotgun off.
were they like capacitors that stored?
They were just oil-filled big capacitors because
Yep.
we were running 20,000 volts through the system. And over here, the 50 was there, and over here was where they had the rectifier bay. And those were the tubes that converted the AC voltage to DC voltage, so that we needed the DC voltage as part of the, to operate, of course, the main transmitter at 20,000 volts. Here, if you notice here, this big hoist, of course, could go right outside. And the idea was if we had to change any big portions of the transmitter, they could be taken right outside, put on the truck, and this, as you can see, that run went all the way down to the other end. And right here, if you notice here, there's a change of paint. See here? See this?
Yep.
See, there's all the way down there, right up to those. Well, there was a wall behind here, about this high, a wall, 4 feet high, and then there was glass. There was glass plate on it, and you could come in here and walk down there, and that was to keep you away from the high voltage stuff. And you were supposed to come in there, and if you saw something smoking or something, you couldn't really hear anything because the noise was high, but you were always looking for problems.
Did you ever see anything smoking?
Oh, yes. Especially from them windows.
Is there any?
Yeah, they were the windows that, you know, you were up above it and you looked in there and you seemed to see things easier from there. But, oh yeah, every once in a while we'd look in there and we'd see there was all kinds of small motors, blower motors, and fans and stuff on the top of the equipment. And every once in a while one of them would, you know, it just ran out of oil or just burned up. And
Did you ever have a fire or anything like that?
we had a very bad fire.
Did you?
Yeah, we had a very bad fire.
About what year would that have been,
Yeah.
approximately?
My notes. Actually, the fire would be in 1978. I don't know if Dwight would remember that.
So where was the fire? In
The fire was in the Continental. There was a short in the filament leads. That was that was the standby transmitter. But in those days, it was our main transmitter. As soon as the Continental came in, it was our main transmitter. And that first bay of the Continental caught fire, and it just gutted it. There was 3 great big filament leads all together, and one of them broke down, and it was like a big electric welding torch. There was BBs everywhere, copper BBs everywhere.
So how extensive was the fire? How did it spread?
It burned out that one cabinet. We were off the air.
Oh.
It damaged the regulators in the basement.
Oh.
It did quite a bit of damage. And Continental, eventually, it was Continental's fault because the wire that they were using that broke down, the insulation, it wasn't up to code. So that would be the big fire. And then, of course, because of that fire, they brought in this halon system. That you can see the remains of this halon system here now.
How do you spell that? H-E-L-O-N?
H-A-L-O-N.
H.A.
H-A,
Here it is right here.
oh yeah, okay.
That would be it. There's a good picture of it. And I don't know what happened to them. Did they just take them away?
Yeah, when they outlawed halon.
Yeah. We were told that when the halon mixed with certain chemicals involved in a fire,
It's
You-
carcinogenic.
yeah, it was just like arsenic.
Oh,
You were given a, and then I wanted masks, I wanted some air, and they started thinking about it pretty,
was it ever used here?
no,
No.
not that I know, do you know?
No.
They used to come and test, these are great big tanks, there was 4 of them.
Yeah.
Where was the other one?
Yeah, behind the door there.
Oh yeah, there's the other one there. Oh yeah, this is what I was interesting here. When you close these doors, as you can see, they closed. And then that wall that I was telling you about is right there. You see?
Okay.
Here's where the wall, and that's what this door was for. You could open this door and get in behind this protective barrier. Was he? And of course, the freight elevator and that door to the diesel room.
Oh, there was an elevator here, or,
No,
no?
no, this was it.
Oh, I see.
And it used to be pretty tricky when we opened these doors because we had to use this thing to hook onto the handle to lift the doors. They were so heavy.
So what's stored down there, or what's down there?
Well, that just goes down into
Oh, the equipment
into the
room.
lower room.
Yeah.
The machinery room, we're right over top of it here, and then there's the storage down there and whatnot. If you wanted to venture down there. If you come this way, Gary, when we first came to work, if we came to work, first thing we would do, we would come in through the garage. And we would go down into the machinery room on that far door from the kitchen. We would go down there. And you'd go down in the basement and you'd check everything over. You'd get all your air conditioning going. You'd get the water going to your tubes, your distilled water. You had pumps, brass pumps down there. And you'd make sure that the pumps were working. And once you got all that working down there, then you would come up, and in here was the main breaker. When you close that breaker, you energize the whole transformer vault. It's outside there. Remember I showed you that whole thing was energized from here. And then you would go down this panel here, and you would set any breakers that might have been required. And you've got water, now you've got water running to your 898s. You have water running. So you would go in there, in those doors, those red doors, you would go in there and you would look at the flow meter. I don't know, is there a flow meter here? I don't think we ever saw one. The flow meter was a big thing. And it had a thing on it, and it showed you, and I don't know what it was, seems to me it was around in the middle scale was 32. I'm not just sure. But anyway, you'd make sure that you had water on your water-cooled tubes. Then you would turn on the filaments to your big tubes. And then you would look in, and you could look in and count the filaments to see if you had 6. Because you needed 6. You could run on 5, but the tube wouldn't put out. So once you got your tubes, water running, your filaments running, you would wait a while, and this would be at 5 o'clock on. Then over here you had 2 switches here, built into behind the red panel. There was a delta switch and a Y switch. And when you figured that the tubes and everything were warmed up, you would go to low power, 20 kilowatts, which I believe that would be the Y switch or the delta switch. I can't remember now. It seems to me it was the delta, but I could be wrong. But anyway, you would go to low power. You'd run your transmitter on 20 kilowatts for a while, and then you would come over and you'd turn your transmitter off, and you would drop that one breaker. You would take say it was the Y switch, you'd take the Y out, and then you would put in the delta and turn the transmitter back on, and you were on 50 kilowatts. And then you would wait for a call from the studios to give you a feed to go on the air.
Yeah. So it was off the air at night, and it came on in the morning. What time did it come on, approximately?
Most of my sign-ons that I can remember was 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock. We used to go to 12 o'clock, except for Northern Messenger. It might go longer.
And then when did it sign off? Midnight or something?
Yeah, around midnight, yeah. And then, of course, we went on 24 hours too for a while. And I'm not exactly sure of the dates we went on. But the reason
that is written in that article there.
Yep.
Yeah. The reason that we were on, that I can remember we were on 24 hours, the first one would be the assassination of President Kennedy.
Okay, yeah.
We stayed on. And then when Apollo 7 got into trouble, we stayed on all night. But we did try broadcasting for a while on a regular basis, 24 hours for some reason or other, and it didn't turn out too good because we had to put on a feed because of the time change. We had to run a feed here in the morning, to fill in a half hour or an hour or whatever. So it was very interesting. There was always something going on. And then too, we had remote control over the French station in Saskatoon for a while, which was interesting. We would try to turn it on because the CBC bought out that French station in Saskatoon many years. I think if you go through that stuff that Dwight's talking about, you'll see in there maybe where they picked up that French station in there and took over.
You told me a story once about a couple of birds on the opposing high voltage lines outside.
Oh yes.
Gary will like that story.
Yeah, on this here, on the transformer enclosure, or the outside enclosure, where all the high voltage, there was all the high voltage, the plate transformers and everything for these transmitters, even the 5 kilowatt stuff was out there. And they had 3 bus bars. I'm not too sure how far they were apart, but they carried the 2300 volts. That was our primary voltage coming in. And I went out there one day and we used to look out there again to make sure there was no smoke or fire or anything. And there was 2 crows. One was on one bus and the other was bus, and they were fighting over a piece of paper or something. And finally, they touched, and there was just some feathers. It was there. It was funny. It wasn't even a flash. It was a poof. Like it. And then the one crow fell into the substation, and he didn't look to be in very bad shape. I mean, but the other one was, it wasn't good. So it was, yeah.
Some would say well-deserved.
Yeah. And before the Continental came, the chair, right here you can see where the speech equipment rack was.
The which?
This was what we call the speech equipment rack. It was a beautiful piece of furniture. And it was up this high and had a slope front on it.
It's
And
downstairs.
this is, I was telling Gary, that some of the equipment, when I came here, you could open these back doors up because, you know, visitors. And this speech equipment in here, the amplifiers and stuff, were chrome plated. Beautiful stuff. I mean, and you know, that all disappeared. That when we went to the newer equipment, of course, it was, and I can't see anybody throwing it out, but anyway.
So what did it do, or
See?
what was it used for?
Well, it was, all this rack was what they called speech equipment. It had to do with all the programming coming in, and you made sure that, you know, that it was amplified properly, and that it was suppressed, and all, and then you had some test gear in here.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had jack panels in here, you could take out equipment, put in,
Yeah.
change amplifiers and stuff like that. The chair for the, as you can see, this piece of equipment is dead in line with here. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
The chair we had would be here, and the red console would sit right over top of CBK. It covered up pretty well this area here. I think if you look at pictures, you can see that. And there's that. I was asking about that. That was air conditioning. That big thing up there was supposed to have air coming out of it.
Did it work?
I guess so.
Yeah.
I mean, you see, this place had two different heating systems. All along there was steam. Originally, those were steam boilers. And under those, in behind that wall, were steam radiators. And then they had the air. They had tons of air going through here because they had to air cool everything. So we used to take that air and recycle it in the wintertime. It was really nice and it wasn't hard to heat this place in the wintertime. It was harder to cool it in the wintertime.
I imagine the equipment was generating quite a bit of heat.
Yeah. There was one other thing here that I just thought about. I don't see any marks. Well, maybe I do. I just have a look here. When we talk about cooling, downstairs we had what was called the train cooler. And right here, this would be one of the marks right here. This mark here, and these holes over here. There was a unit along here, and it was, what it did was, it took the distilled water that was being cooled through the train cooler, and then it brought that water up here, and this was a water, it was a heat exchanger here when it was a water cooler. So we used to have to use town water to add a little bit more cooling to the distilled water in weather like we're having now. So if we got to the point where our temperature on our water tube cools got too high, we would have to maybe cut down to 20 kilowatts. And that would get rid of some of the heat and we would be able to stay on the air. But that's,
What would this have been here, do you know?
that would be,
That was where the dummy load sat later.
Oh,
yeah, this is where the dummy, that's right. This would be the air, because it was very close to this switch system to the coax here. Yeah, that's good. And I don't know what that is.
That's part of that GPS thing that
Oh, is this doing
failed.
something?
No.
No.
Good idea that didn't last.
So this again was 5 kilowatt. This here, I'm trying to think what sat on here. There was a heavier transformer sat on there. Be part of the 5 kilowatt. 5 kilowatts started here and went right up to the 50. And of course, you could walk on top of all that equipment. Everything in the building has to be grounded. And this is how you would ground everything. We had to lay copper. See the copper we had to lay there, and you had to have copper everywhere to ground all the equipment. Grounding was very, very important.
What's this fellow here?
That there is what we call the sampling coil. And what it was you had the RF on here, you would have the RF of the transmitter on there, and then you'd pick a point down here to monitor your RF signal. You could monitor your modulation and, you know, output and all kinds of stuff. That was a sampling coil. And I've seen that thing get hit. If you got hit with the transmission line, you got hit, it would. I've seen this coil just cut all the way down to the bottom. Every strand, like somebody cut it with a lightning hit. Yep.
And these coils here?
Well, they again are part of the 50 kilowatt tuning circuit. Yeah. They go along with the capacitors. You had a tuned circuit that would be. See, everything when you're running on one frequency like 540, everything has to be tuned, you know, to that particular, to the impedance of your antenna and to the frequency, and everything has to be just so that everything loads up properly.
Anything else in this area here, or should we go up to the studios? And
Yeah, well, there's one more thing, I think. It's kind of interesting. We talked a lot about water. That's one thing that I wanted.
what's that?
This here. I was looking for one of them one time. Now it's time for me to get rid of my jug. Over here, Jerry, was the distill room. And this is where the water still was. And I don't know what's in behind here now. I imagine that it's a big hole. It's a big hole. But I don't know. Yes, there's no lights. But here, you can see where the water still was. Right here. And there's the drain. There'd be the drain there. And you started that still up, and that was quite something, because you had to monitor the water all the time and make sure that it was the best distilled water you could get. You had to have distilled water because you couldn't afford to have the breakdown because of the high voltage. You see, the distilled water was running right over top of the plate of the tube, which was at 19,000 volts or so. So we had targets in there, in the water lines. And we used to have to change them a lot, and they would burn right off. You could just see them melting off. Oh, there was a lot. The water itself caused a lot of problems because you couldn't have any leaks, and you had to have a storage. You had a big storage tank downstairs, and you had a running tank. You know.
And it's still causing us trouble.
Well, and if you can imagine in a power failure, of course, you know, like the flow meters and stuff like that, we had all kinds of interlocks. Like if you didn't have enough air on the 5 kilowatt air tubes, there was a vein in there, it would drop your high voltage. There was a lot of things that we had going that would automatically shut down for you.
What are these items here, Orin? These are,
Yeah. This was used, this was used to check the antenna current. And you would hook this up. You would hook your transmission line up so that once you were on the air, you could go and see exactly what your RF was, which would be up in the 30. And then you wouldn't leave it there too long. You wouldn't go right back. And of course, that's why I had the long handle, because you wouldn't have to get too close to this to draw an arc and get burnt. I had one RF burn in my time, and I got it, I forget where I got it. I think it was one of my knuckles. One of these knuckles, this knuckle here. And it went through my glove, and I could smell it. And when I looked, there was my knuckle, the white knuckle. No blood, just a bad smell. And it took forever for it to heal up. It was the worst thing, but it didn't, I didn't get a shock or anything like that off it. RF was, when you've had little RF burns, I imagine, Dwight?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I try to avoid it.
Yeah.
that's amazing with, what did you say it was, 20,000 volts? Or 19,000 volts?
20,000, yeah.
And the amperage and,
Oh, the amperage on the 20,000 volts was up there pretty good too. I don't, well, for example, we were putting 30 amps to get 540, 50,000 watts with that tower, the big tower. We had to put 30. What are we putting into it now?
Still 31.5.
30 amps. And that's why this was in the middle scale. Everything, you know, and if you look at this thing here, it was rated at 40 amps, so you had to be careful. I think. But you know, we did one time measure the voltage. We tried measuring the voltage, RF voltage, which is, it's not like just seeing what the voltage is on your.
Yeah, it's because when we think voltage, we're thinking 60 cycles, because that's what we get when we plug something in.
Yeah.
This is at 540,000 cycles, so
Yeah.
it's a whole different.
But we were thinking around a couple thousand volts, something like that, in that area. So where we came up with that,
It's almost more something you gotta calculate back.
Yeah, well, we were
50,000 watts,
we were doing that. Yeah.
divide by 32 amps.
Yeah, it's a kind of it's a complicated thing. All we know is that the RF was there.
Yeah.
was there anybody ever hurt seriously with all that?
We had a very, very good reputation here, and as far as I know, there was no one ever very seriously injured that I can remember. That there RF burn I got might have been one of the worst. I did get hurt in the wintertime on my skidoo. Fell off my skidoo up the tower, put an arm on it, but that wasn't really had anything to do with equipment. That was my own
But I mean,
doings.
with that kind of voltage, it would be deadly.
We had a good record because these transmitters are that kind of voltage, you know, and having to go out into that transformer enclosure during a lightning storm and try to figure out what blew up or what wasn't working, and that was, you know, there were dangerous times. But that grounding hook was all over the transmitter, all over the equipment. One of these with this end to the ground. And you didn't touch anything. You touched nothing if you were working on it. And you made sure that was grounded in whatever you were touching. And you left it there. If it was a capacitor or something, you left it hang there. And that was I would say was a lifesaver, that little thing right there. a perfect item to display, I think.
That's a good museum piece.
Oh, man, yes.
They still use them in the tuning house.
Now, I was wondering, yeah, that's a vacuum tube voltmeter. Oh, God. Now you can carry one of them in your pocket. Yeah. And this is that old general radio stuff. Frequency bridge. That was a bridge that you used to do impedance, primarily with the tuning circuits and maybe to see what the impedance of the tower was. And that's just a test oscillator. I don't even remember using that. We had stuff better than that.
This is just basic.
What's that, a tube?
Voltmeter.
Oh, yeah, an old voltmeter. And again, this stuff you can carry in your pocket. That's amazing. What's this thing?
That's for doing a hard line.
Oh, yeah, now you see, that's something that I don't even remember seeing that, isn't that?
That's probably something that they've added since they've been using
I've
the
never-
pressurized air.
Yeah. Well, we used to try to keep the coax clean or dry. And that's about, the coax is running out there now. They still have gas on it, I guess they.
Yeah. I think it's actually just air. It's just pressurized air.
Yeah. This here, if I'm not mistaken, that there is a spare oscillator.
Oh.
And what that was for, it was very important that when we went on the air, that we were located exactly on the dial at 540. We couldn't move much off of being dead on. And this was a crystal in here, in a tube, an oscillator, and a crystal that was heated. The crystal oven in there and everything is in there. And if we lost our oscillator, we had two oscillators. We had a standby oscillator, and if we ever lost an oscillator, we always had this one that we would. And then we used it also, we used it when we were doing bridge measurements and stuff like that. So that was a little piece of emergency equipment. And everything else in here, was the mice been in
So
here?
this was your workshop, was it?
Well, it was our workshop, yeah.
Right.
Everything had to be Dixie gray.
What was the purpose of that?
I had a lot of paint, I don't know. It was a common, Dixie gray was a CBC color. Along CBC had their own blue for a while. But, so anyway. But there was the mice, at least the mice have been using the toilet paper, at least that. Look at what they're doing in here. They're having a ball in here, aren't they? Dwight. Hey?
Yeah, the mice are happy.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, you know, the mice in our day was pretty serious because they would get in that, especially they'd get in there. If they got into the 50 kilowatt, they didn't give us much trouble.
Yeah.
But in the 5 kilowatt, you know, they could happen to be running across a relay as it was closing or something, and boy, I'll tell you, you were. And then to find this, you know, and then clean it up, and oh.
So how long has this building been basically vacant? It's not used since they put the transmitter, the new
I
transmitter.
started monitoring in '93, and it was, you know, it was being used, but it was a remote controlled site, so it was vacant as far as people went.
And then when they moved the transmitter out,
I think that was 2009.
2009.
Well, Dwight, I figured the other day that it's other than the times that I was monitoring, like you were, I haven't worked here, I think it's 26 years.
Well, I've been monitor since, 93, that's 19 years.
And then I did work for another haul working. I was here for a couple more years, and that's when I got you involved. And they were, so that's a long time. So you want to go downstairs?
Or maybe,
Go upstairs first?
yeah, let's go up.
Okay. Now, the interesting thing about this was when we were on full staff here, it was a funny thing. The transmitter operator, the guy that sat in that chair here, the transmitter operator, he was the boss. When we had, these studios were being used. You know, it's like there'd be guys up here reading the news in the 40s and doing things like that. And this was the control room. You're in the control room now.
Oh yeah, there's a noticeable sound barrier in here, eh?
Well, yeah,
Yeah, I'll get it.
is that glued?
No, I didn't.
No. Okay, if
It's
Dwight,
stuck but not glued.
if Dwight closes and opens the door, listen. Close it hard. I'll open it quick.
Oh, suction.
You hear the
Yep.
copper?
Yep.
That's copper. This is all lined with copper sheet. It's all copper. And that was for RF. You had to protect. All the equipment in here had to protect it from the RF, from the transmitter.
And this is sound absorbent.
Yeah. An official. This was the control room, and that's, if they did any programming, the guy would be here, and mostly what was in there originally would be a table and some chairs and a microphone, stuff like that. There was big turntables here, two big turntables, and we were able to record. See, we were recording Sputnik every time it came over,
Oh, okay.
on 20 meters, I think it was. Yeah, 20 meters. Sputnik.
That was 1957.
Yeah.
October 1957.
So,
And this was,
that actually was the studio. That was the control room, and this was the studio.
this is the studio.
Yeah. And this here, this was the boss's office in here. Mr. Boss's office. And I think they call that was the stenographer's office. I don't know that.
And so this was where the manager was, eh?
Yeah. And this was another blower that we used to look after, and it seems to, I don't know, it looks like it was running on its one time, not too long ago. That's the exhaust.
It would kick in if the Continental was running and it was like a really hot day. It would
Yeah.
kick in.
The thing with this was, because everything on the south side, the whole tower on the south side at the front was intake. It was all air intake. And this was all exhaust back here.
And this was the secretary's.
I think that was what, at one time and then when they have a little longer this on the floor,
Yeah.
where is this coming from? It's not coming from the ceiling.
Wondering if this window here. Or it's coming from the next room over that might have rained enough that it's settled over here.
Yeah, there's some.
Well, here's that shortwave radio,
Yeah.
that Helicrafters.
Is it an S40?
I don't know, where does it say? It says Helicrafters.
Yeah, let me just have a look. S40. That's an S40.
You were right.
S40. And the channel master, I don't know. We never. TV wasn't the thing that we had much of. These electric heaters were all put in when the transmitter more or less was closed down, you know, trying to keep the place. We didn't need them because, as you can see, you know, all the other stuff is steam. Steam there. Steam here. Yeah, this was
These were very unique wall radiators too, because every other building, the radiator's stuck outside the wall, whereas these were designed to be countersunk into the wall.
A very interesting thing here is, when this building was opened in 1939, all the blue here you see, that blue, all that blue, there, here, there was a vinyl, plywood vinyl glued on there. This was all originally vinyl.
It's been painted over? Or?
Yeah, varnished, just like this.
Oh, okay.
And it started cracking and lifting right off the bat. And they couldn't keep up with it, I guess, so they got rid of it. And one of the guys that worked here, I think his name was Brockman, got the contract to get this, you know, the story I heard. I don't know if this might not be the kind of story that should be told maybe. But anyway, he thought that he was going to do it in a hurry. He was going to use a torch. And I guess maybe you couldn't tell whether George was getting rid of the vinyl or the transmitter was burning up or whatever. So it was bringing visitors up here. That was easy to do. You keep them away from the high voltage, you know.
This is the front entrance again, and the entrance to the gallery.
Now, when they brought in the Continental, see, when the Continental arrived, it came in, what was it, 4 pieces? 4 bit? 4. I think it was 4, including the transformer.
Yeah.
But anyway, they couldn't get them in through the freight entrance, because we must remember the old RCA is here running. They couldn't bring them on through here, and they couldn't get them in there. They wouldn't come in. So poor old Jeff Baker came in. He had to take out this door, the jam. He had to take out that door and everything, and he had to remove this. And those pieces, the Continental came in through the door, and luckily it went out.
Went out the back.
It went out the way it was supposed to come in. So.
Well, should we go downstairs? And this,
That, of course, like I was telling you, they used to call that the announcer's lounge. The announcer's lounge. This was a very sacred
The remains
place.
of the last announcer on the floor there.
Where's, where's the rest of the computer? I see the mouse.
Yeah.
you say this, what was it about this room? It was,
Well, the announcers were the,
Elite?
they were the elite. They were, the announcers were more important than anything else in radio. You know, the fact that they were talking into a microphone And it wasn't plugged in, didn't bother them one bit. There was a technician that was supposed to plug it in and make sure it got on the air, not the announcer. So he was very important. Okay. Yeah. Things just get older.
When's the last time you were in this building, Warren?
Well, like this, I don't know, like, we were in here, I don't know, a couple years ago, maybe?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, we had a lot of meals here, we did a lot of,
Hey,
we
hey,
did
look,
a lot of work.
it's kind of the coffee room.
Yeah, there's a coffee room.
Well, would this have been the room, like if anybody was staying here, they would have used this too, right? For
Where's the mouse
cooking
hole?
meals? Pardon?
The mouse hole's gone. Mouse used to have a hole here someplace. Must have plugged it up. Oh, I had trouble with mice. Found out they loved fiberglass. This was always unique. People used to laugh at this. Why would you have a shower with a glass door? You know, there was the kids would come in and they'd laugh. They never saw a shower. And they, why would you have a glass door in a shower? I mean, you know, why have a door at all? I mean, if you're going to have a glass, that was their way of thinking. And here we are. How many showers have you seen that have a solid door?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, I don't ever remember, I remember guys staying here, but I don't ever remember anybody ever. Boy, that's bad. When you consider this is the second floor. Mm. Now, did they change this panel?
This is the one that has always been here.
Is this the Halon, the original
Yeah.
Halon panel?
Yeah.
They haven't changed it.
Yeah, it's got the Halon
Yeah.
warnings and things here.
Yeah.
I was just always told that if the horn ever sounded when I was in here, you had like a minute to get out before it deployed the Halon.
That's what we were told.
Yeah.
And we had the fire. Of course, there was no Halon then.
Yeah, that was.
Now, when I would come to work, I would come through this door and I would go down these steps. This is the route you would take. You know, like if you were on the 5 o'clock shift. I'll keep this door open a little bit. Thank God for banisters. And you just imagine here's another thing. 30 years ago, when I was working here, 40 years ago, I would come up these steps and I'd take maybe 4 at a time. We got used to it.
Huh.
Can we go in here for a minute?
Sure.
This one, right here? I just wanted to go and have one look in here. Because this place never changes. I asked Dan the other day about this.
That's Dan's radio.
Yeah, and this is, that's
Brian's.
Brian's
Out
gift.
there.
Somebody gave him that and he thought he might as well give him $1,000, but that was many years ago. Now, I'm just gonna go down here. See,
Well, you're looking for that distiller?
I just wanted to see what, here's the coil that they used. They had to use this coil when they were putting water on the 898s, the water. So this was the coil that you pumped your water through. That was the insulator. And this coil was a double coil that comes and goes in here. There's 2 channels in here.
Oh, okay.
And that was the coil that they
Oh, okay.
used. You'd pump the water in there and it would go through it. And this piece of plumbing here was in that room. And you could bypass water and put it through a dummy antenna. which usually burned out when you tried it. But, turntable stuff, there's another one of those coils. An old clock. There's the flow meter. Right there.
We'll get adjusted.
I think that's a flow meter.
I can get it down there and I can hold it under the better light if you want, Gary.
Well, that might be something to think about.
Need a fan for your car.
I think that might have been my fan, so I don't.
Don't throw it away yet.
No, well, please throw it away. But I think, just see if that looks like 32 or something on the center scale. If you can lift it.
This is heavy.
Yeah, that's a flow meter.
Gallons per minute.
What's the scale?
We're stuck at
10, 20, 30.
15, but yeah, it goes up to well, just past 30.
Yeah, well, we used to run that pretty well up, you know, we used to run that, I think, pretty near full scale.
I should put this on my water line at home. Figure out why my water bill's so high.
Yeah.
Okay, so that, I cannot see, oh. These pieces all piled on top of each other, that represents the old beacon on the old tower.
Before it blew down.
Oh, okay.
Well, this was a spare.
Okay.
It turned into powder.
There's actually still remnants of that glass out at the end there.
Oh,
where
sure.
it crashed down.
I wouldn't be a bit surprised. Now, this was the tube room.
I'll go around and turn the light on.
You've got all the pictures in here, but this is the tube room.
I think he's gonna turn the light on there.
Yeah. This is the tube.
Little tubes, big tubes.
If you're interested, there's a new flow meter.
Flow meter?
That's a new one.
Okay. Spare.
So there you are. You got a
spare.
spare. There's the old, yeah,
And floor polish.
in the old 857Vs.
What did these do, Orin?
Well, they were the rectifiers. They're the ones that they had 6 in a bank, all glowing blue
Okay.
when they were running. And of course, that was your way of getting DC voltage. There was mercury in there, and the mercury would evaporate when the filaments heated it up, and that gas permitted, you know, for the electrons to flow properly, easily. Yeah. And I told you pretty well about this, didn't I? There's the red console
Okay.
that sat in the middle of the room. Now, I don't know where the bottom went, where the actual desk went. But on there, Gary, you'll notice one clock was outage time. One clock started as soon as you had an outage. And you know, that's quite a relic too.
Yeah.
This is some of the switch gear that you used to have to use when you would go from, if you wanted to run on 5 kilowatts, you would disconnect it from the 50. And then tenuary pad.
I'm just getting a little detail on this console here.
Yeah. There'd be outage time and, oh God, that was, you know, in those days, every second, you had to account for every second. And the thing that was really bad in those days was the fact that you had to keep our programs on, type it. And we weren't typing, you know. You have to type out every outage and every program that comes on. That's the old speech equipment rack I was telling you about, right here. Right here. And it was a beautiful piece of wood. And in there was where they had those nice chrome amplifiers and stuff, you know. Everything is, there's the remote control there. See, we have to remote control, if you're in the shelter, we have to be able to run the transmitter. Those are the transformers for the 857Bs, the rectifiers.
These are the transformers?
Yeah, that's for the rectifiers, those 857Bs. The transformers for the 898s, I haven't seen one yet. Do these lights work?
They should, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What's this room, or?
Well, this was, we used to call this a regulator room, because mostly in here was regulators, but there was other transformers in here.
The unit that used to stand here is in the new building now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Distribution files.
But they're not bringing the voltage in at 2300 in the new building, they're bringing it in at the nominal level, so they didn't need these anymore.
Yeah, well, they couldn't, they had to get away from 20.
Yeah.
For sure.
What are these big cables here? Voltage?
Yeah. Yeah.
Bring the high
The
voltage.
smaller
in.
ones are the high voltage coming in,
Yeah.
the bigger ones are the lower voltage going out.
Yeah. You can see the size of these cables where they're picking up the current here. You can see how big these are. And most of the transformers, if you bothered to read them, they would tell you what the primary and what the secondary voltage was. Here is 2400. Well, that would be, they'd mean 2300. 277.
I'll just get
75 kilowatt. 75 kilowatt rating. That's a pothead out along the transformers that was out in the enclosure, out in the transformer enclosure. Yeah, there's where the pump sat for the distilled water. Down there in that lower bay. And here was the running tank. We called it the running tank, big copper tank. And on there was another big tank. And that was our standby, our storage tank.
What did you call this room here?
This would be the machinery room.
Machinery, yeah.
Yeah.
You've got a picture of it.
I got a
In
good.
its heyday on your website.
Oh, yeah, you've got a picture of the way it was in probably 1940.
Yep.
Yeah.
Get a picture of your ceiling here.
Yeah, this was, there was guys came in and couldn't believe.
Well, even
The structure.
that Bernie Flaman, when he first saw this, he just couldn't believe it. That
Yeah.
it was used in a building that was constructed in 1938.
Because it's well built, I mean strong, or?
It's something that they didn't really start using until the 50s. And it was like 20 years ahead of its time.
Are you protecting the water?
Yeah,
You've got his own home?
it's plugged in. Probably unplug it again for the summer.
What is that?
That's where the water main.
Well, you see, if it freezes
Oh,
and it breaks, besides this place filling up with water, there's no shut off that I know of until you go back to into town there, into the pump house. So, I don't know what they're gonna
Then all
do.
these,
Have to do something someday.
control, breakers control
Yeah.
water or
Yeah.
water pumps or?
Well, they would control all these here switches. You would turn on the pump you wanted. Then you would turn on you had the train cooler, and then you had two other big air conditioning motors in here, and you'd get all the air conditioning going. And I forgot what this was for. 30 and 60.
Bulldog something.
Isn't that funny? I forgot what that breaker is for. Do you know?
This is kind of the way this room has been ever since I.
It almost looks like a master switch of some sort.
Yeah, but there's no coax coming and going unless it's in the back
Oh, yeah.
or in the wall.
It won't be coax, it's power.
Power, but where is it going?
It's a transfer switch, yeah. I could use that in my house to hook to a generator.
I wonder if that's the transfer switch we used for the pumps. I'll bet it was.
Yeah.
I'll bet that's what we used to transfer the water pumps. Now, there's something that you wouldn't want to have to buy.
No.
So anyway, well, you got lots of water in yourself here.
I see that.
So I think, Gary, I can't tell you much more. There's not much to tell, except this here would be the filter. This is where you would have to come in here. This is where the main filters were. What was it? But anyway, behind there, there.
There's a light switch.
Yeah, behind there is where the main filters were, the main intake filters were.
One side or another.
Filters for the...
This is the main air supply coming into the building.
Right, okay.
That was all added for the Continental, right?
No, that was original.
Oh, that's original.
That's original. They added extra in the main transmitter, but this was primarily that was the.
And you used to have to pick up dead bats out of there?
Well, if you went down to the bottom of the drop,
Yeah.
there was bats in there. But they were easy to pick up. You went in with a vacuum cleaner and there was nothing left of them. They were.
Did you want to go to the shelter?
Yes. We forgot about that. A quick look there, Orrin, or how are you making out?
Oh, I think I'm doing okay. I'll go upstairs and sit down for a minute. Get out of the shower. I'm not too bad in the morning, but by the time the stupid arthritis, I think that
This is sorry.
that's my daughter's, Brenda's barbecue. Can you imagine? Oh God, I hope.
Tell us about this fallout shelter.
Oh God. Well, first of all, there's water here.
What? It's humid down here.
Hey?
It's wet. Everything's wet.
Oh, yeah. Well, right, what we had down here was right here was again the speech equipment rack. There was a console, and there was a console and a chair where you could sit at and operate the transmitter and the programs and everything like you would upstairs. Everything was repeated. That's why we had all this stuff on. We repeated all the lines and all the control circuits and everything was repeated.
This could serve as an alternate studio in case of,
We could run the transmitter from here.
yep.
Put on announcements. We had the turntable. Put on announcements. Broadcast from here.
That would have been in the 60s during the Cold
Well,
Cold
it
War
was
kind of thing.
the Diefenbaker bunker years.
Right.
But we never did it. Mind you, we never decided that we were gonna spend a day down there to see the work. That didn't work. That was a bedroom built for two. Bunks in there. There was two. This was a bedroom built for two. And I hate to tell you whose speakers those are, but they used to be mine, and I wish somebody would tell them mine. As I did. See here how the veneer came off? This
Well,
is the way.
that's
This is the way it came off that red, all that toweling.
The blue veneer.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and in here, well, yeah, I see you've got things working here pretty good, eh, right?
Well, we're keeping ahead of the water.
This tank here, Gary, was supposed to be always filled with fresh water. We had all that water in case we needed it. And then, I don't know where the toilet went. There was a seat with a bag on it.
Is this for the fall shelter?
This was, yeah. And these here blowers, we were never supposed to run them. Because that would use the filtering capacity of the two filters that are outside there. So, and they're brand new, and they're beautiful blowers, and now they're sitting in their junk. It seems to me, I think they're even 110 or something.
So this is
A
water
reasonable
water for the shelter, was it?
This was.
Yeah.
Yeah. I come down here one time and the glass was broke. And there was water everywhere. But I'm surprised at how fast the water's going in there. Table is up pretty good, eh? What have you got on there?
Well, the check valve isn't working here, so it looks like somebody's rigged up some kind of a...
Oh, they still doing something with this?
Well, it still pumps.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
If that wasn't pumping, we'd probably have 3 feet of water in here again.
Yeah.
We can pretty much tell.
You just got the one
Yeah.
pump running.
There's your throne.
Yeah.
Bag not included.
Oh, and right here was a cabinet here full of food. Full of food.
There's a hot plate underneath here that's probably never been used.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although it was underwater. The water level, it was just underneath the...
That's why all this veneer's off of here.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And the electric heater, that would have been interesting, have water.
Well, you can see right there.
Yeah.
That's how deep the water was in here. That one spring when the pump failed.
Boy, you talk about humidity. Now, this pump here, that was funny. That was an emergency pump. That's the way you got water out of the tank into the sink, in case you didn't have any water pressure.
Manual pump.
Yeah. And then we used to talk about that with the old RCA. We didn't have any electricity, and we didn't have a diesel then. You know, there was a lot of thought went into it, but nobody ever thought of testing it and actually seeing if that was a good system, you know. if it was-
That's sort of like Y2K. They spent millions of dollars.
But I think the thing, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I think the thing that really would be upsetting about it all would maybe be the fact that what were we doing out here and our families were in there. So,
Exactly. I thought of that too. It's working at the hospital. If you have an incident happening and you're supposed to
Yeah.
be at the hospital, but, hey, what about your own family?
Boy, oh boy. And you know, I'm not kidding you, Gary. At one time when we had caretakers and we looked after everything, you literally could leave, you know, you could eat off the floors. But, oh yeah. Well, look at that.
I'm starting to look at them, yeah,
Okay, but if you're looking at the first day,
for the guest book.
the guest book, you look at the first day and then you'll see where it closed. It was only open. And then from then on, if you wanted to get into the building, Gary, you had to ring a bell out at the gate. I think that you had they had an alarm out there, a phone. I think it was a phone out at the gate during the war years. About what?
Ethan Baker
Oh yeah,
was here, but he never signed the book.
and his signature isn't in the book,
I've never found it.
but I know he'd have been here.
But it's in the history book somewhere that he had visited the site.
Well, but anyway, how I met him was I was a kid going to school, and I had this job at Brockman, who was the local plumber. And Diefenbaker was coming into town a lot because this was his jurisdiction. He was whatever that was.
His constituency?
Yeah.
You say he had a cabin here?
Hey?
Did you say he had a cabin at Manitou Beach?
Well, he was staying at a cabin at Manitou Beach, and he was up on the roof doing something, and he slid off the roof, and coming over the edge of the roof, he grabbed down an eave trough and pulled the eave trough off the side of this cabin, but it wasn't high off the ground. I mean, he was a tall guy. He could have probably reached up like this and pulled it off by standing on the ground. But guess he just didn't realize how far it had fallen. So he came in and asked Brockman if he would go out and put the eave trough back. So George Brockman, I was, the gopher, and I went out and put the eave trough back up, And John's brother, Elmer, used to come into town a lot, and he sold stuff like to George Swift. He would be selling him stoves, and he represented some company in Regina. But Elmer, if you saw Elmer and John on the street together, you would never guess in 1,000 years they were brothers. But when John was around, you listened to what John was saying, because he was telling you the way it was. He was a real politician.
And you say he visited here, but he never actually signed the...
I don't. It would be before my time, before I worked here. I was here most of the time this transmitter ran, but I was going, when they were putting this tower up, I can remember the tower going up one stick at a time. The original tower, and I'd be 1938. I think they started building in 38 because the winter of 38, this whole building was covered with whatever they used in those days. And they had a steam boiler off a steam tractor out there heating.
And that's what Stan Stacy did. He kept
Pardon me?
steamboat, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The guy that had got the most money of the workers, if he had a sleigh, horses, a wagon. Lost my voice. Time to quit. Bye.
that,
Just something you'd see in outer space. Very impressive.
you wanna tell us a little bit about it, Orin?
Well, you have to, Dwight will have to tell you what you're looking at.
You wanna tell us a little bit about it?
Okay, what are you looking at? That is the transfer switch there. It's all electronic now. Whenever one transmitter is hooked to tower, the other one is automatically hooked to the dummy load. The old place they used to have to physically change things around. This is all done right inside of this switch here. This is the motor that does the job. They had trouble here after that storm went through. Knockhill wouldn't stay up, so they had to switch to continental. So they came out last week to do a night shift to check out the feed line and the tuning that was in the tower. I haven't talked to them before. They came up with something got turned out of whack. That's what I think maybe the tower took a good hit in that tuning coil and then went out of whack.
I saw lightning strike here.
Well, you know, I have pictures of it when it was all nice and symmetrical. Then I was in there one time and they're all dented. The coils like that. See how that one is a little bit out of shape? Out there now, it's really out of shape. So I'm wondering if it maybe took another hit.
What's the black one?
I don't know, I'm wondering if that's just oxidation. I don't think it's smoke.
Well, this one is it. Tell us what this equipment is here. Is that, what's this here, Dwight?
That's, I guess you call that the speed trap right now.
Okay.
And they're getting all their signal in off of that large satellite dish receiver out there.
Right.
They've done away with the fiber optic. The only thing they have is just a standard audio feed on a regular telephone line as a backup if they need it. But it sounds very, very poor because it doesn't have the quality.
So where's the actual transmitter? Is this,
This is it right here.
oh, this is it here.
This is the Nautel.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It was the one that was moved over here first. Because they got in all assembled and ready to go. They tested it in the dummy load before they did the switch over. Then the night of that March 16th to 17th, they did the switch over. Then the following couple of weeks, we brought the continental. I can get you those dates exactly for sure.
And then this is the old,
This is the continental that was
that used to be in the,
used to be in there. Well, they both used to be there. This one was in the wall. This one was on top of that.
and this one still works just for backup, right?
Yeah, they were actually using it for about 2 weeks there last after the storm. Yeah.
Well, things have changed a little bit.
Isn't it nice and pure? Air conditioning, clean, lots of light.
If you look at the size of that new transmitter compared to the RCA there, different altogether.